17% of the seats it was defending. Fag packet math time, 83% loss. 83.
But so far, most of those seats that Reform have taken have been from Labour, which of course then heaps more pressure on the Prime Minister.
The results are tough. They are very tough. And there is no sugarcoating this. We have lost brilliant Labour representatives across the country.
Keir Starmer has been hit by a brutal political blow as Labour loses hundreds of council seats, with projections nearing 2,000 losses in a crushing electoral backlash. The results show a harsh public rejection of Starmer's promise of change, with many voters clearly feeling that Labour has failed to improve their lives fast enough. As Labour struggles to contain the damage, Nigel Farage and Reform UK are surging with 300-plus seat gains, turning public anger into political momentum.
Very badly for Keir Starmer, very well for Nigel Farage. I think that Keir Starmer is probably going to lose something like 1,800 councillors across England. He's not going to be in power, his party's not going to be in power in Scotland.
These elections marked the first major public test of Starmer's government, and the verdict was devastating. Less than 2 years after taking power, Labour is losing ground in areas once considered untouchable, exposing how quickly political goodwill can collapse.
And the pressure is on already on Keir Starmer. The vultures certainly are circling in regard to his own position. Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, he's going to be a very happy man later on today. Many, many more Reform UK councillors.
Okay. The numbers are brutal. Labour projected losses heading toward nearly 1,864 seats. Analysts placed that result deep inside what they officially called terrible territory. Losing 1,500 seats is already dangerous for a governing party. Approaching 2,000 turns embarrassment into something far more serious. It turns into a leadership question.
Here is the bad news for Labour. They're on 219 seats, but they were on a lot more because they've lost 235. They are by far and away the biggest losers of the night.
Michael Thrasher, one of Britain's most respected election analysts, put it plainly. This was not midterm pain. This was a political alarm bell going off at full volume. Now ask yourself, when was the last time a government lost this badly this fast?
He's projecting the results that we've got at the moment and on a dotted line to where he thinks we'll end up on the gauge. And you can see we're not in good, we're not in okay, we're not in bad, we are quite far into terrible. He thinks that on the current trend, we are just short of the 2,000 loss mark. So that is a pretty bad result. That is Michael Thrasher's prediction.
Labour did not just lose seats in the abstract. It lost Tameside, a council it had held for 47 years. Nearly half a century of local dominance, built across generations, wiped out in a single night. This is not a protest vote. This is structural anger. Deep, accumulated, patient, and now exploding. And it happened right on Angela Rayner's political doorstep, which makes it even harder for Labour to ignore.
If you look at this, it shows where Michael Thrasher, Sky's election analyst, thinks this sits. He's projecting the results that we've got at the moment and on a dotted line to where he thinks we'll end up on the gauge. And you can see we're not in good, we're not in okay, we're not in bad, we are quite far into terrible. He thinks that on the current trend, we are just short of the 2,000 loss.
Hartlepool did not signal a shift. It delivered a political earthquake. Reform UK swept in, seizing 12 seats as Labour lost 7 and the Conservatives 4, turning a once fiercely contested battleground almost entirely turquoise overnight. And this was no isolated shock. Wigan, Redditch, Bolton, Salford, and Halton tell the same brutal story. These are Labour's historic heartlands, the communities that shaped its political identity, and they are no longer merely drifting. They are being decisively captured. The red wall is not cracking. It is being torn down and rebuilt in Reform's colours.
Nigel Farage told GB News at the party's Millbank Towers, "I think what you're witnessing is an historic change in British politics. Forget left-right, there is no more left-right. It is gone. It is out of the window. It's finished."
Here is what makes this genuinely dangerous for Labour. Reform is not simply collecting angry conservative voters. It is pulling from both sides of the old political divide. Ex-Tory voters who despise the old brand. Ex-Labour voters who feel the change they were promised never arrived. Reform is presenting itself as the vehicle for both groups simultaneously, and it is working. Nigel Farage stood in front of cameras after the results came in and declared that left versus right is out the window. That framing is deliberately targeted at Labour's working-class base. He is not speaking the language of traditional right-wing politics. He is speaking the language of betrayal, abandonment, and establishment contempt, and millions of voters in Labour's old heartlands are nodding along.
But certainly, Keir Starmer is wounded, and I think probably fatally.
Farage no longer looks like a man shouting from the sidelines. He looks like a man building a machine. Now look at Starmer's response and watch what happens. He stood in front of reporters and admitted the results were very tough. He said, and these are his own words, that there was no sugarcoating this, that voters don't feel the change, that Labour made unnecessary mistakes, and that his government had failed to give people hope. He said he takes responsibility.
Well, we have been saying for months that this is going to be Judgment Day for the Prime Minister, and from the early results, and it is still early days, lots more still to come, it does look as though the judgment of voters on Keir Starmer is even harsher than some of the very bad predictions that we have been seeing. Have a look at this graph, which shows the wins and losses so far.
Then, in the very next breath, he ruled out resignation entirely. The most damaging attack on Keir Starmer came from Keir Starmer himself. When a prime minister stands at a podium and admits his government has failed to deliver hope, the central promise of his entire political brand, that is not a setback. That is the foundation cracking live on camera.
To meet those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from those challenges and plunge the country into chaos.
Yeah, they've sent a message that they want to change.
Well, they've sent a message that the change that we promised isn't being delivered in a way they can feel, and also, frankly, they're fed up with years of the status quo. But we were elected to deal with those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from that.
His defense against calls to resign was that leaving would plunge the country into chaos. Critics responded immediately. Labour has already lost hundreds of councils, thousands of seats, and public confidence is collapsing. If that is not chaos, what exactly is Starmer waiting to prevent? The argument sounds defensive because it is defensive. It is the argument of a leader without a plan for recovery, buying time with language about stability while the ground disappears beneath him.
It appears Reform UK, under leadership of Nigel Farage, has penetrated the red wall Labour seats. What is very clear to me is that voters have seen the incredible work of Reform UK councillors in Reform-controlled councils, and they have voted to have a Reform council.
Reporters stopped asking about policy on election night. They started asking whether Starmer personally is the problem. They asked if he would still be Prime Minister next year. That shift, from what went wrong to should you still be here, tells you everything about where British politics now stands. Names are already circulating. Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner, Andy Burnham. The rebellion may not be fully organized yet, but the fear inside Labour is now public, no longer confined to private conversations in Westminster corridors.
But look at this. In 2026, absolutely all Reform UK light blue.
Labour also faces a two-front crisis that creates strategic paralysis. In the North and Midlands, Reform is demolishing its working-class base. In Oxford, London boroughs like Ealing, and university cities, the Greens are chipping away from the progressive left. Move right to recover the red wall, and Labour bleeds its urban, educated voters. Move left to hold the cities, and Reform accelerates in the heartlands. There is no obvious path through, and Starmer has not shown the political instinct to find one. These council losses are not just symbolic either. Councillors are the ground army of any political party. They knock doors, deliver leaflets, mobilize voters, and give national politicians local credibility. Labour has just lost thousands of those people. The damage to its ability to fight the next general election is real and structural, not something you fix with a relaunch speech.
Everybody at the top. I think we need to see a real change in direction here. We made some serious mistakes early on. It will be repeated at general election, and that's why there has to be a moment of reckoning now.
Starmer keeps pointing to his 2024 landslide as proof of his mandate. But that argument is now actively working against him. If a government with a historic parliamentary majority is already being punished severely, it raises a question voters are starting to ask out loud. What exactly did that landslide deliver? A big majority can protect a prime minister in parliament. It cannot restore public trust once voters decide it is gone. The broader picture is even more troubling for the old political establishment. Conservatives lost ground too. Lib Dems and Greens made selective advances, but reform dominated the narrative of the entire night. It stole the oxygen from every other opposition force and turned anger, raw, working class, post-industrial anger, into actual institutional power. Seats, councils, local infrastructure, media momentum converting into something far more durable.
But they still want their lives to improve. They still want to see the change that we promised. They know the status quo is letting them down and they're frustrated. They don't feel the change. I understand that.
This was not just an anti-labor night. This was an anti-system night. In politics, momentum is the difference between a movement and a monument. Reform has momentum. It has energy, direction, and a leader who understands the emotional register of this moment. Labor has explanations. It has process language about difficult inheritances and international conditions. Farage channels the anger. Starmer explains why the anger is complicated.
And that hurts. And it should hurt. And I take responsibility.
In this election, anger won. Reform found the public mood, Labour failed to control it, and Keir Starmer was left standing in the wreckage of a political backlash he can no longer dismiss as temporary frustration. The real question in British politics is no longer whether Starmer had a bad night. It is whether the collapse has already begun.
Well, but for Keir Starmer in his Labour Party, it takes 81 MPs to go on the record and say they want him to go to trigger a leadership contest. Now, there are certainly rumblings that many senior figures in the party, including the former leader, Ed Miliband, who is the Environment Secretary, may have tapped Keir Starmer on the shoulder and said, look, you've got to at least set out timings to go.
Starmer may still command the numbers in Westminster, but power on paper means very little when your strongest territories are falling, your local political machine is being dismantled, and voters who handed you a mandate are already turning away. When a prime minister starts losing authority this fast, history gets very unforgiving.
In areas like the North and Midlands, which should be their heartlands, and then huge wins, huge gains for reform, albeit from a baseline of basically zero. But if that is the judgment, the verdict from voters, it is up to MPs and ministers to decide what the sentence is going to be for the Prime Minister.
So ask the question Labour insiders are increasingly afraid to answer. Is this a warning, or is this the beginning of Keir Starmer's political end? Because if this collapse keeps accelerating, this will not be remembered as a difficult election night. It will be remembered as the moment his premiership started to die. And no one inside Labour will be able to stop it.